how I went from a career in engineering to making a living online. Now, back in fifth grade, I was 10 years old. I was your typical, what I would call a pre-engineer kid. I was always making things, designing things. If there's anything broken around the house, it was, hey, Omari, can you fix this? And so I kind of found my niche early on. I remember my mom took me to the library one day and I went on the internet, which was still like a new concept at the time. And I found a description of a mechanical engineer, and it really seemed like something that I wanted to do. It fit the kind of things that I was into. And so I remember printing it out and going home and putting it up on my wall. And that kind of set the intention of this future career that I wanted to have. And so, as you're a kid, people always ask, hey, what are you going to be when you grow up? And so, during that time, I was always kind of playing around with, yeah, I want to be a mechanical engineer, and you'd get a positive response. And so I remember in eighth grade now, I started getting bused to a neighboring suburban town to go to school. And I'd get to school really early in the morning with nothing to do. And so I'd camp out in the computer lab for like an hour or so until everyone else got to school. And that's where I discovered Google. That's where I discovered coding and web design. And I remember in eighth grade, I would leave class to go to the bathroom and sneak away to the library to play on Microsoft Front Page. And I don't know if the librarians ever told my teachers, hey, he's not actually going to the bathroom. He's coming here to play on the computer. But that's what I was doing because I was so into it. And so when I got to high school, fortunately, the high school that I went to, they had a lot of resources. And so any course that I could take on design, on programming, on anything related to computers and, getting my creativity out on the internet, I was consumed with those classes. And I remember I made my first website that freshman year. And anytime I had to make a project or do a project for class, if it was possible, I would try to make like a little website for it. And so I remember I made my first website, me and a friend of mine, and it was called osquared.8m.com. And it was on a free hosting server thing because I couldn't afford, I didn't have any money. I don't think my mom had a credit card to give me to do any of this stuff, and I wasn't asking her about it. And so that was like my first, thing on the internet. And the funny thing about that website was I believe it was for my web design class. And I had a bunch of pages teaching or, saying why it's important to learn HTML and CSS. And this is 20 plus years ago. So fast forward sophomore year, and I start getting college letters, and my mom's like, hey, so, what are you going to do? What are you going to study? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do web design. I'm going to be a web designer. And my mom's like, web design? What happened to engineering? I thought that's what you said you wanted to do. Can you there's no, basically my mom had no idea that this could be a legitimate career field, and so I didn't know any better. She didn't know any better. And so I kind of just brushed that to the side, and it was full steam ahead to college for mechanical engineering. And so I went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and I remember when I got there, I got my first laptop, and on that laptop, a friend of mine introduced me to a program that I can make beats with. And so in high school, I was really into music, but I didn't have the resources to really make anything other than if I went to church, I could mess around on the keyboard. But I didn't have equipment and all of that of my own to do anything with. And so, in high school, I had taken some courses remember I said I took every kind of course I could take to get my creativity out. And so in high school, I was fortunate to be able to learn video production, audio production, radio production, all of these these things in addition to my regular AP coursework and stuff, and physics and calculus and all of that stuff. So there's always this like, you know, creative thing going on and this technical thing going on. So when I went to college, I picked back up where I left off, and I was just in my room making beats all day, in my dorm making beats all day. And by sophomore year, I got put on academic probation because I had not passed some classes because of this other obsession of mine. And I remember again, my mom's like, "What are you doing?" You know, she called me like, "Hey, you can come back home and go to the local community college because like it doesn't seem like you're really doing what you're supposed to be doing up there." And so I didn't put the music away. I just made sure I got my schoolwork done. And I remember my junior year, I finally got an internship in mechanical engineering. And it was for a company that made RF connectors. So like, I'm not going to describe what that is, but they made this thing called RF connectors. And my manager was, I remember I always had like big aspirations when it came to like, you know, getting into the corporate world, right? And so I remember learning that my manager had been in the same position for like 20 years. And to me, that was like, I don't want to be in the same position for 20 years. I want to, you know, I want to move up into like a corner office. Like I want to be a C-suite executive. I remember in my college internship interviews, they would ask, you know, where do you see yourself in 10 or 12 years? And, you know, my naive 20-year-old self would be like, oh yeah, you know, I want to be the CEO, you know, of GE or Raytheon or whatever company I was interviewing with. And I remember the interviewers would kind of just look at me like, yeah. But anyway, I'm in this internship and I'm learning like, all right, maybe this isn't exactly what I want to do. So I scheduled a meeting with the VP of our part of the company. And because I wanted to know, like, how do I become you? Like, it's, you know, it's cool to see all these other people here, but I want to be in your role one day. And the question that I really was trying to figure out was like, all right, when I graduate, should I stay in school and get an MBA, or should I, you know, jump straight into the workforce and get my MBA later? Like, what's the best route to get into this like C-suite role type of thing? And his advice was, you know, he had gone and gotten his MBA right out of school. But if he could go back, he probably would have waited because there's just more value in the MBA later on in the career. And so I remember I took that argument back to my mom, who was like, "Nah, just get your master's now. You're still young, you know. Don't wait. You know, just get it out the way." And so with a big exhale, I was like, "All right, let me do this." So instead of getting an MBA, I decided to get a master's in marketing and technology innovation. And I thought, all right, I've got a bachelor's in engineering and a master's in marketing. That would give me like, you know, the best of two worlds essentially. Now, mind you, I'm still, you know, engrossed in music. In fact, now as I'm getting ready to graduate, now I've decided instead of just making beats, I want to be the artist. So now I'm like really super passionate about music, and I'm in grad school. I actually put out a couple albums, and you know, it feels great. I'm in school, but at the same time, I was hedging my bets, right? I knew that I would have a much better, at least career option by, you know, making sure I get a job after college than trying to drop out of school and, you know, get into the music industry. So even though I had music dreams, I didn't necessarily have a desire to get into that industry. I knew that my prospects were better in the field of my study. And so I still needed a job. And so soon before I graduated, this is like 2009, 2010, I went to a National Society of Black Engineers conference because, you know, a lot of my friends had gotten jobs from those conferences. And the problem for me though was now that I had a master's in marketing, I didn't really fit the profile of what these companies were looking for or the companies that were showing up at these job fairs. So I remember I'm at this job fair and like I'm having these conversations with these recruiters, and it's just kind of like, yeah, sorry, nah, like we don't really have anything for you. And I was feeling really defeated. But before I left the conference room, I decided to go back one more time and reintroduce myself differently. And so while before I had approached everyone with, hey, I'm a marketer or I'm an engineer or whatever, I decided to say, hey, my name is Omari, and I'm a problem solver. And so I walked up to this recruiter and introduced myself, and like magic, she flipped over the paper on her clipboard, and right at the top of the paper it said problem solver, and it had a description of a rotational leadership program that essentially I got the job for. And so I remember in that moment, it was like, wow, like I don't know how it happened, but it was like meant to be, right? So I graduate, I move away, and I start working for Verizon in this leadership development program. And at the same time, as I start making money, and it's like, all right, finally, after all of these years of school, I've got my own place, I've got a car, I'm making money. Um, I started to get really depressed because it was almost like I had kind of given up on some of my own dreams and passions, or I just didn't feel good. And I remember 5 months after graduating and starting work, I got a DUI. I went out one night with a bunch of colleagues in my program, and drove home drunk, got arrested, and I remember that kind of put me into an even deeper depression because it was like, you know, like how could I screw this up? Like, how could I screw everything up so badly, so quickly? And so I lost my license for 3 months, which felt like forever. And my biggest concern was my job, right? I was like, what if my job finds out, and so on. And fortunately, one of my coworkers, I carpooled with him for those 3 months. What up, Amir? And fortunately, it worked out, right? But then a couple years later, right, I'm on my fourth rotation, and I've gotten all this different experience. I'm really excited. It's like the last rotation before I kind of graduate from the program, and they put you into some type of managerial role. And things start to go really downhill. Um, One, I get a couple of things happen. But let's just get to the worst of it, right? The worst of it was I got a second DUI. And then on top of that, I got some great news, which was that I was going to become a father. So it was like just the best and the worst at the same time, right? Because the second DUI, the consequences were a lot worse than the first time around. The first time around, it was just like slap on the wrist. The second time around, still not that bad, but I would lose my license for 2 years, thousands and thousands of dollars of fines. And it was right at the point of my career where I was supposed to be like, getting into leadership or whatever. And so, and then again, I'm learning that I'm going to become a father. So I had to make some very tough decisions. And it was like, all right, what am I going to do? And so the clock started ticking. And fortunately, I was able to get a lawyer and buy some time with the DUI case. And so while that was like, pending, I started looking for jobs. And so I went through a process of like trying to find roles that fit the most recent role that I had played. However, it was tough because of the different rotations. I didn't have like any significant experience in any particular thing. It was just so diversified. And so I thought, all right, well, maybe I should go back to school, right? Maybe I should try getting a degree in film. And you might say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, when I graduated and I started working, well, I picked up videography on the side and photography as like my new side passion thing. Since music didn't work out how I wanted it to, I thought, well, maybe if maybe if I'm making videos for artists, that could help me to build my network, and then I could sneak my music back in once I've kind of built a reputation around that. So anyway, videography had become like the thing that I was known for outside of work, and so I thought, all right, well, maybe now it's the time that I should just get into that. So I thought about applying to film school, and I was like, nah. And then I started applying for some internships in like some more creative roles, right? Thinking, all right, let me just try this again, right? Kind of restart, reset, and try to go after what I was passionate about. And so I'd respond to these job descriptions on Craigslist or wherever else I found them, and I would respond, passionate videographer. And I actually got a couple of internships like that. And so one was for a design agency in the city who had some really big clients like Budweiser and American Express and Spotify and stuff. And the thing was, it was a free internship. I kind of just met them up on the street one day, and they're like, yeah, you can come hang out with us, and we can figure out where you fit in at some point. But I just didn't fit in. And then there was another internship that I gotten with I think it was like a fashion blog, editing their videos. They would do these interviews. And so I remember editing a couple of the videos, and it was, again, a free internship. And I remember thinking, like, I can't go from engineering and, the salary that I have to, like, cutting that in half or less or nothing at all by taking this other route. So, now I'm like, I've only got a couple of months left before my son is born, and I've only got a couple of months left before I gotta, face the judge and deal with this DUI thing. And I remember writing down on a piece of paper how, this is a little Jamaican colloquialism, how money I gonna make. In other words, how am I gonna make money? And on that list of paper, I wrote down a few things. I wrote down videography, which I was already doing on the side, photography, tutoring, and then the last thing I wrote was web design. Now, I didn't really consider myself a web designer, but I'd always made websites for myself as I needed them. And if a friend needed one, I would make one for a friend. And so I remember I searched Squarespace web designers, and I saw that there was like, they existed. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not really sure that I can like sell this, because like, if this is something that I could do myself, like, what is it stopping other people from doing it themselves? So it was at the bottom of my list, and I didn't really, take it seriously until that December. I went on leave, paternity leave, and while on leave, I got my DUI conviction, which meant my license would be suspended for 2 years. My son was born like the week after that, and so I couldn't drive. I couldn't drive my wife to the hospital to give birth. So my mom picked us up, and on the way to the hospital, I'm like, I don't think I'm going back. And like, what do you mean not going back? I'm like, I'm not going back to work. And they're like, you're about to have a son. Like, what do you mean you're not going back to work? And I mustered up all of the courage that I had in me to, say like, I'm just not going to do it. And so I was on paternity leave for about 6 weeks before I finally just officially put in my resignation. And now it was all in. There was no more job to fall back on. I didn't have much savings. I emptied out my 401k, and now I just had to figure it out. And so I had a lot of faith, and I knew that uh, as long as I didn't die, right, like that something would work out, like it would work out somehow, some way. But I also had a lot of wishful thinking. And so I was wishing and hoping that like a big bag of money would drop out of the sky and allow me to just like go all in on my passions. I was under this idea that, okay, all I needed to do was like take the leap or make the leap, and then everything else would just like land in place in like a matter of months. And I think partly because there's so many stories online, you're on LinkedIn or wherever you are, about people quitting their job and then just like everything like taken off like 6 months later. And so I had that expectation, and I was moving with that energy, and I had to figure out how to get clients and how to take these diverse skill sets that I had accumulated over these years and, make them work as a freelancer. And it was a very tough transition. I mean, I remember that first year was like a roller coaster of up and downs. I remember 9 months in, I landed my first retainer client, and I felt like finally I made it. I almost replaced my monthly salary income, but I realized that I was kind of regressing back into like just like an employee state of mind, and so where I should have been operating from a higher level, I kind of just like almost treated it like a job again. And after 2 months, I lost that client, or moved on from that client, that project. And that first winter it was like just terrible. It was broke, no light, like just lights are shut off, all type of stuff. So now I've got a 1 year old. My wife is like, yo, what are you doing? What's going on? I've followed you all this way. And so my wife went back to work, and now I was a stay-at-home dad with a 1 year old trying to figure out how to make money online. And if you've ever tried to make money online, then you know that it's filled with a whole lot of scammy, just illegitimate characters and charlatans trying to sell you like junk stuff. And I remember when I was still working for Verizon, I remember signing up for a newsletter called International Living because I had these dreams of living abroad. And in every email, they would, try to sell you something at the bottom. And I remember thinking like why are they selling, why do you have to sell how to make money? Why can't you just like tell somebody for free if it's how to make, like I just couldn't wrap my head around this, how that worked, right? How people were like selling you on making money. So anyway, I still like signed up for all the webinars. I read all the blog articles. I consumed as much information as I could. And that second year, I remember I had gotten like really depressed again. Geez, that's a lot of cycles of depression. Anyway, so I remember I got really depressed, and because I'm waking up every morning, no money. My wife had become like the breadwinner, and I felt like I hadn't accomplished anything at all. Like the degrees, none of that like mattered anymore because none of that had gotten me to where I wanted to be. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was just saying like, I just don't feel like I have anything. to be proud about. Like, I don't have any accomplishments that I can really like, hang my cap upon. And he was like, well, if there was one thing you could do right now for money that you would be happy about, what would it be? And I was like, probably, making Squarespace websites. And I had made a handful for some of my freelance clients as like an add-on service to the videos and photography and the other kind of work that I was doing. And I liked playing with the platform. It allowed me to be creative. It wasn't too technical. However, I could get technical with it if I wanted to. And so I decided that I was going to focus and I was going to specialize in this website platform, and I was going to learn the ins and outs of it and build a business around it. And so that summer, this is 2015, summer 2015, I started a website, sqspthemes.com, squarespacethemes.com, with the intention of selling Squarespace templates, so website templates. Now I'd grown up seeing website templates, and I'd bought a couple along over the years, and so I knew that it was a viable business model. And then with this particular platform, there were no third-party template shops or providers or anything like that, because technically it just wasn't really feasible at the time. But I decided that I was going to try my luck anyway. And I also had somewhat of a long-term vision where I knew that at some point in time there would be a lot more demand for this particular website platform and for templates for this platform. And so that's what I kind of like, put a stake in the ground on with. And things started to turn around. Things started to grow. And, after about 6 months, I was feeling really good. I was able to, my wife didn't have to go slave at her job anymore. And, my son turned 2, and we were able to move out of where we were living into, live workspace loft environment that I'd actually dreamt about years before. And now I was like feeling like, all right, cool, like I'm making it finally. So I remember I took on a client, another a freelance marketing client, because now I was more confident, right? Now I was like, all right, I've got some results under my belt. And my big goal was like, I wanted to get some real solid results for anybody who I worked with. And so I remember I was able to finally get those results with this client after about 8 or 9 months. And I was like, all right, now I'm going to go all in on doing this for myself. Now, it's a little bit of a long story because even though I started this website to sell templates, I actually didn't sell any templates the first 3 years. So during that whole time, I was simply acting as a web developer and helping clients with small website tweaks that needed to be fixed. And so I was still able to leverage content marketing and the SEO and all of the stuff that I had learned in order to do that, but it was all attached to my time. And so I remember I hit a point of burnout where like I just couldn't do it anymore. And I knew that I needed a product. And obviously I wanted that product to be templates, but it just didn't work out like that. Now I had created some training products, some small courses, but those were more like one-off things. They weren't sustainable. They weren't bringing in like ongoing income. And now I'm like, 3 or 4 years into working for myself as a freelancer and as a freelance developer, and just really stressed out like all the time, right? I'm always trying to come back to the laptop to work on something for a client. And I think before my daughter was born, so now my daughter's on her way, and I realized that, like, something has to give, and I don't know what it is, but something has to give. And so I stopped all the client work, and I try to just go all in on the content, the SEO, and this product development and affiliate marketing. And I remember I didn't make any money with any of it, barely. I barely, like, it was like it was worse than the first go around when my son was being born. Look, I'm stressed out talking about it. Um, Man. So my daughter's born, and we're at the hospital, and my mom's like, "So what are you gonna do now?" I don't know. She wasn't laughing. I wasn't laughing. I'm just laughing now talking about it. But yeah. So I remember I went back to basics. I went back to the last thing that was working for me, which was before I burnt out. I was doing these Squarespace tweaks. Someone needed to adjust something on their template, move something around, that type of stuff. And after a couple of months, I started to, like, build back up some momentum again, and I was able to hire another developer who had way more experience than me, more skills, because I was really just kind of hacking my way around. And after I hired that developer, the projects that we started to work on, there started to be like a reoccurring theme, because now I was able to focus on the marketing side of things because I had someone to fulfill the delivery with the coding. And we got a couple of projects that were like the same request, like back to back to back. And I said to the developer, I said, "Hey man, what if we turn these tweaks that we're doing into plugins?" And he was down. He was like, "Yeah, that sounds good to me." And I made him a really simple virtual handshake offer. And we went into business. And so now I finally, 4 years later, I had a product. And slowly but surely, things started to pick up. And after a couple of years, I was able to now turn on the template side of things that I had wanted to do originally, but this time as an affiliate. So instead of creating the products myself, instead of creating the templates myself, I was, promoting other people's templates and getting a commission off of that. And so leveraging these two revenue streams, the plugins and the affiliate stuff with the templates, I was finally able to grow this online business to a full-time, living that allowed me to get my time back. When my third child was born, there was a sense of relief finally after the fact, because I was no longer like constantly under this chronic stress. I could wake up in the morning and there was money that wasn't there the night before. I was finally making money in my sleep. If I took a nap, I'd wake up, there'd be a sale. If I took my kids to the park, there's still money coming in. And so after all of these years of pain and struggle, I had finally like cracked this thing. And it wasn't like that. It was just a steady, constant, grind. And it was like a mind trip, because I had struggled with this thing for so long that a part of me thought maybe it wouldn't be possible for me. But once I started to get my time back, and I was able to kind of operate at a higher level, I started to get back into the passions that I had left behind. So I started making beats again, early 2019. And then finally, this year, or yeah, towards the end of 2021, I started putting out songs. And so this year I've put out over 20 songs and an album called All I Ever Wanted, which is essentially the soundtrack to my life now. It's all I ever wanted. And, like, I can't really speak more about how relieving it is now um, than how it was then. And so my big goal now is to be able to transmute these experiences into valuable content and resources for anyone who is making a similar transition. Engineers, creatives who are trying to make a living on the internet. You know, you're who I'm speaking to. I'm essentially speaking to my younger self with all of these videos. Now I work out of my family's gallery slash art studio. I homeschool my children. You can see my wife's easel back there, and you can see kids' books on the shelf. And it's all I ever wanted. And you check out the merch. We got the Line of Judah tees and sweats and stuff. So now I'm where I always wanted to be, and I want to share that experience. And that's the point of this website, or wherever you're watching this video. Maybe it's on YouTube directly. That's why I'm creating these videos, is to bring my younger self, into the world that I'm in. Because the younger me, was struggling with a lot of unspoken and a lot of emotional challenges that, in order to get here, I had to overcome. And on my way here, I learned that these challenges aren't typically like talked about. Everyone's talking about making money online, but what about the anxiety you might have of reaching out to a potential client, or what about the fear of raising your prices because, like, you don't want to be a burden, or like things like that, right? Those are some of the things that, I struggled with for a long time, just to name a few. And so my goal is to really help anyone else who is out there. Maybe you're an engineer too, or maybe you are a creative and you're going through this transition of working for a company, or working for yourself in a self-employed kind of way, and now you want to develop maybe your own products, or create an online business that allows you to get your time and freedom back. So you're the reason why I made this video, and so let me know if you found it inspiring or enlightening below in the comments, and thanks for listening.